सुनाई दे रहा है आपको सबको? बताइए, कमेंट्स में बताइए सब कुछ, ठीक है? यूट्यूब पर है। देखना है आपको?
Not all at once, and that would be ridiculous. But over the course of years, I've read at least.
Hi, in this video
Oh.
I want to show you
Sorry.
two
I've read over 100 books on Python. I mean, not all at once, and that would be ridiculous. But over the course of years, I've read at least 100 books on Python, and I want to share my 3 favourites with you. So these are some of the books that I've read. I don't know, you might recognise a few of those. But before I share with you my 3 favourites, there's something else that I want to tell you that I think is even more important than the 3 books that I'm about to recommend. So here it is. Oh, I can't actually find anything I want to show you in order to demonstrate this, so I'm going to have to go and get one. Just bear with me while I do that. Do you want to see what's in the bag? Let's have a look. Yes, it's a dictionary. But how is an English dictionary relevant to learning Python? Well, I'm coming to that. So imagine if you wanted to learn English, and I said, what you need to do is get yourself a nice big dictionary like this one that has loads of vocab, and there's a section on grammar too. I did not know that. Do you know what the collective noun for apes is? It's a shrewdness of apes. Learn all the vocab, learn all the grammar, and then you'll know English. That would be terrible advice. It's also terrible advice for learning Python, which is why you have to choose your first book carefully. Instead, you learn a little bit of vocab, a little bit of grammar, and then you practice. Practice speaking and writing. And at first, your facility with the language is nowhere near enough to be able to communicate the complexity of your thoughts. So you learn a bit more vocab, a bit more grammar, and it becomes an iterative process until you can communicate exactly what it is that you want to say. And eventually, if you're lucky, your ability with language develops to the point where it helps you come up with original thoughts and ideas. And it's exactly the same when learning Python, which is why, as a beginner, there are certain books you should avoid. So as well as giving you 3 book recommendations, I want to show you how to recognize what makes a good book for a beginner. Let's start by looking at a book that's bad for beginners. This book isn't very good for beginners. There's too much vocab, too much grammar. It's overwhelming and it's more likely to put you off. That's not to say that it's a bad book. It's just not well suited to someone that's new to programming and new to Python. What you want is something that gives you enough of the basics, the vocab and the grammar, to get you started on projects as quickly as possible, which is why I like this book. What I like about Python Crash Course is that it's split into 2 parts. Part 1 teaches you the foundations. It teaches them thoroughly, but it doesn't linger too long on them. And Part 2 takes what you've learned and uses it to create projects. Part 1 is that thick. That's all the Python you need to know in order to be able to work on the projects. So you learn the foundations of Python in a few pages, and then you start doing interesting things in part 2, which is where all the projects are. And the first project to do is a game, and it's pretty good actually. It's Space Invaders, so you'll be building something like that. You'll also build an interactive data visualization, learn how to work with APIs, and build a web app using Django. It'll introduce you to Git and GitHub, and give you advice on text editors and IDEs. So you spend a lot of time learning how to apply what you've learnt in part 1 to building projects, which is the whole point of coding in the first place. This really is an absolutely excellent book for beginners, and it's my first recommendation. Book 2 becomes a little bit more difficult because learners' needs diverge. I don't know why you want to learn Python, Maybe you want to do data analysis. Maybe you want to develop web apps. And that would influence the choice of the second book. But this second book, I think, would be useful for everyone. Whether you want to learn Python to do data analysis, or whether you want to do web apps, or whether you want to go into computer science, you should have an understanding of at least the basics of computer science, because that will be very useful to you when you're trying to problem solve further down the line. And that's why I would recommend this book. Python Programming by John Zell gives a very thorough introduction to the basics of computer science. It will help to ensure that you don't develop any really bad habits as you teach yourself to code in Python. And it will help you to understand why things should be done in a particular way. And as you work through it, you'll develop your algorithmic thinking and problem-solving skills. And I think that's an essential step for anyone that's teaching themselves. And the way I would approach this book, especially if you've already started with Python Crash Course, is go to the end of each chapter and attempt the exercises. And when you get stuck, go to the section in the chapter that explains that question or helps to explain that question. Go through every chapter that way, and you will get an overview and a foundation of computer science that I think will stand you in very good stead. This book actually is a very old version. It even talks about Python 1 in here somewhere. There's a much newer edition. The choice for book 3 is, well, it's trickier still, because it really will now depend on where your interests lie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend more than one book, but I'm not suggesting you get them all. Just choose the book depending on what it is that you want to use Python for. So if you want to carry on in the same vein as this book with exploring computer science a bit further, I would suggest this. It's called Classic Computer Science Problems in Python, and it's the sort of things that you might get in a technical interview, search algorithms, that kind of thing. And if you're interested in computer science, I really think you'll like this book. There is another one as well, if you want to go down the algorithm route and explore those. Algorithms Illuminated. This is an excellent introductory book on algorithms. It's not actually in Python. It uses pseudocode to explain the algorithms. Maybe you want to use Python for data analysis, and if that's the case, then there really are lots of books to choose from. In fact, the choice is so great that it can be paralyzing. But I'm going to give you 3 options for this that won't disappoint. So the first 2 that give a sort of broad overview of data science, or to use Python for data analysis, are these 2. Learning scientific programming with Python. Now, I know this says that it's covering scientific programming, but actually what is covered in here are all of the tools that you would need in order to be able to use Python for data analysis. So that's a really good sort of broad book on the subject. And then there's this one, Python Tools for Scientists, which is quite similar, really. It covers all of the tools that you would need for science, but also for doing data analysis. And I really like these 2 books, although they don't say data analysis or data science in the title. They're actually very good for learning the skills that you need to do that. However, if it's just pandas that you want to learn, then the best book on pandas that I have seen is this one, Effective Pandas. This will teach you how to do pretty much anything you can imagine in pandas. It is a superb pandas book. In fact, this is the first edition. I think there is now a second edition. So check that before you get it. But if it's pandas that you want to learn and you're not interested in learning the other aspects of data analysis, then you don't need to think twice about it. This is the book to get. Oh yeah, one last thing. It's always a good idea if you can borrow the book from a library first so that you can get a feel for whether or not it's right for you. Did you know that interactive learning can be up to 6 times more effective than traditional methods? That's why I use Brilliant.org, the sponsor of this video. Whether you're puzzled by data science, need to refresh your linear algebra skills, or are curious about cutting-edge topics like quantum computing and neural networks, Brilliant has a course for you. What sets Brilliant apart for me is how engaging and straightforward their learning process is. Every course is filled with interactive content and follow-up questions, making learning not just informative, but also incredibly fun. You're not just passively absorbing information, you're actively solving problems and building your skills step by step. One of the things I like most about Brilliant's courses is their thoughtful and skillful design. They're structured to gradually build up your knowledge, ensuring a solid understanding of each concept before moving on to the next. It's learning at its finest, designed to fit into your busy schedule. With Brilliant, you can learn anytime, anywhere, whether you're on a lunch break or unwinding at home. And getting started is absolutely free. Just go to brilliant.org/Python programmer or click on the link in the description, and you'll get to explore everything Brilliant has to offer free for 30 days. And the first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription.